There is a strange paradox that only those who have walked through the darkness of a narcissist can fully understand. They are not captivated by your weakness, nor by your unconditional kindness, and certainly not because you are easy to lead. The truth lies in a much deeper layer, so deep that you don't even realize it's operating in every moment you are present. They are drawn to you because of the light your soul radiates, a light that cannot be borrowed, cannot be bought, cannot be imitated. That light is forged from sincerity, from a heart that is not fragmented, from a self that once shattered and stitched itself back together with willpower and compassion. And because they can never have it, they begin to envy you in a way that feels almost instinctive, like a desert envying the rain, like an abyss envying the sky. But the light is only half the story. The other half, and the part that keeps them from ever truly letting go, is your energy. This energy is not loud or chaotic. It is a form of presence that makes people feel seen, calmed, and supported. The narcissist does not understand this energy, but they sense it the same way a starving creature senses a source of life. They see in you the very fuel their hollow ego cannot generate on its own: empathy, warmth, genuine connection, the ability to quiet storms inside others. According to Jung, this is not an ordinary bond. It is the collision between a soul beginning its journey toward becoming itself and a shadow desperately searching for something to cling to in order to avoid facing the emptiness within. You are not just someone they want to conquer. You become the mirror they look into to feel real. And from the moment they realize your light cannot be controlled and your energy cannot be possessed, they begin to swing between two poles, envying your light and obsessing over your energy. This is why they idealize you and then destroy you, why they leave and then return, why they punish you yet fear losing you, why they try to suffocate the very light they are most drawn to. Because in the end, to the narcissist, you are not just a person, you are the source of light their darkness simultaneously fears and craves, and the stream of energy they are addicted to, unable to walk away from, even as your very presence exposes the deepest cracks in their soul. Part 1. Light born from a wound. In Jung's language, light is not a matter of morality or pure spiritual beauty. It is the sign of an inner structure that has passed through chaos, has cracked, but still had the courage to reorganize itself. Light is not born in safety. It is born from children forced to grow up inside wounds. Some children choose to build walls, hide their pain behind a flawless mask, and over time, that mask becomes the false self, the foundation of a narcissistic personality. But there are other children who, instead of building walls, must widen their eyes and expand their hearts in order to survive, learning to observe every glance, every breath, every subtle shift in a home starved of love. This observation to survive is what creates the empath. Jung called this form of sensitivity a thinning of the unconscious membrane, a structure that makes the child absorb emotional signals many times faster than the average person. It is not an innate gift, but a survival device shaped by wounds that never closed. When they grow up, this survival mechanism becomes deep empathy, seeing the darkness behind a smile, hearing what others do not say, and sensing things before others are even aware of them. This is the strange light that emerges from a wound, the kind of light Jung believed could pierce through another person's persona, the social mask. And because this light reveals truth, it becomes a mirror that cannot lie. That mirror is what makes the narcissist both drawn to you and desperate to flee. A narcissist was also a wounded child, but they chose the opposite path. Instead of feeling the darkness, they turned away from it. Instead of learning to face pain, they created an illusion to hide inside. If the empath dissolves into other people's emotions to stay safe, the narcissist freezes their emotions to survive. One becomes a living antenna, the other a locked fortress. And when these opposites meet, the first thing that occurs is idealization. The narcissist sees in you sensitivity, compassion, nuance, coherence, things they lost long ago. They are drawn to you not because you love them, but because you reflect back the part of the soul they can no longer touch. But idealization lasts only until they realize your light does not serve their ego. They do not want light to heal. They want light as an ornament, something that makes them look more grand in the story they compose. And when your light no longer glorifies their self-emission, admiration turns into envy. Here the distinction is important. Jealousy wants to own, but envy wants to destroy. The narcissist's envy is directed at the very qualities in you they cannot create. Your authenticity exposes their artificiality. Your warmth exposes their coldness. Your emotional freedom exposes their rigidity. Every sincere act of yours is living proof of how far they have drifted from their own soul. From this perspective, the empath is Mozart's effortless, vibrant light, while the narcissist is Salieri, hard-working, yearning, but empty at the level of soul. Every note played by the empath reminds them they have never truly lived. And because that light is an undeniable reality, they feel humiliated even when you are simply existing. That is why your light becomes the seed of their envy. You are not trying to illuminate anyone, but light has its own nature. It reveals. And when your light shines on the narcissist's shadow, their ego revolts. They do not want to learn, they want to smash the mirror. Meaning, diminish you, deny you, or destroy you, the one reflecting what they refuse to face. The tragedy is, the empath does nothing intentionally, yet they become the one who is hated simply because they dare to be real, because their light proves that vitality, sincerity, and real love still exist. And that is precisely what makes someone drifting in illusions feel emptier than ever. The ultimate truth is, your light is not a weapon. It is the story of your survival. But because that light shines on the very places the narcissist tries to hide, it awakens envy. And envy always seeks to destroy what it cannot possess. Part 2. Your energy. The life source the narcissist is addicted to. If your light is what threatens the narcissist, your energy is what keeps them close, through clinging, addiction, and total lack of self-control. In contemporary psychology, emotional energy is not an abstract idea. It is the capacity for emotional regulation, neurological stability, and the field a person creates that makes others breathe more easily in their presence. For an empath who learned to survive childhood chaos by observing and adjusting to emotional shifts, this regulating capacity becomes instinct. As adults, they unconsciously do for others what they once had to do to stay alive. They stabilize the internal storm of the person standing before them simply by being present. This is where obsession begins. The narcissist, who suffers from emotional dysregulation and cannot soothe themselves, feels unexpectedly and intensely calmed inside the empath's energy field. Your energy becomes a second nervous system they borrow to function. From a neuropsychological lens, the reason is simple. Empaths have a sensitive yet self-regulated nervous system, while narcissists oscillate between hyperactivation and emotional numbness. This makes them ravenous for stable energy from any source they can cling to, and the empath accidentally becomes the highest quality emotional supply because they do not merely react, they regulate. This regulation is not intentional. It is an energetic field your body emits, a steady heartbeat, deep but soft eyes, a way of listening that makes others feel safe. Together, these create in the other person a feeling they cannot generate within themselves, the feeling of resting inside someone else's mind. For a narcissist who lives in constant internal chaos, that sensation is addictive. And because they cannot produce internal stability, they need you like a power source. This is why in narcissistic relationships, therapists describe a phenomenon called emotional outsourcing. They rent your emotional system to stabilize their inner world. They never say it. But they need you to reduce their panic, ease their emptiness, and feel themselves through your reactions. Your energy becomes a form of psychological nutrition. They cannot self-generate, creating dependency. They are not obsessed because you are beautiful, kind, or smart. They are obsessed because you are their source of existence. At a deeper Jungian level, this is the stage where the shadow clings to a light source to feel it has shape. The narcissistic ego lacks a center. It is like a room full of mirrors without any object in the middle to reflect. When a narcissist meets an empath, they finally perceive a shape, but it is not theirs. It is your reflection. So they cling to you to feel who they are, that they matter, that they exist. This is not love, it is energetic parasitism. The paradox is, the more they take from you, the weaker they become. The more they depend on your energy, the more terrified they are of losing you. But the more terrified they become, the more they attempt to control you, and the more they try to control you, the more they suffocate the very source of energy they need. This is the loop analysts call the crave, destroy, depend, punish cycle. They crave your energy, destroy your light, depend on your stability, then punish you for the dependency they created. Energetically, the empath is a clear lake, while the narcissist is a dehydrated wanderer in a desert. They drink from you, drink more, drink until depletion, and when the lake is no longer as full as it once was, they blame the lake for not being pure enough, even though they themselves stir the mud. This is what makes them obsessed, enraged, clingy, and destructive all at once. They hate the fact that they depend on you, but they cannot function without you. And because your energy provides unconscious healing, the narcissist experiences two opposite sensations in your presence. They feel safer than ever before, and simultaneously more threatened than ever before. Safe because your energy soothes their fear, threatened because your energy exposes their fragility. This inner conflict fuels their volatility, the idealization followed by devaluation, the love followed by hate, the desire to stay followed by the impulse to destroy everything you give. Because your energy makes them feel comfortable, safe, and regulated by proxy, at first they cling to you as if you are their replacement nervous system. But that same stability begins revealing their disorder. The closer they get to you, the clearer the contrast between the two structures becomes. You have a center, they do not. You have inner substance, they only have an outer shell. You self-regulate, they only react. You have light born from wounds you faced. They have darkness they refuse to confront. And when this truth becomes too clear, the entire envy-obsession cycle activates. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your very energy unconsciously activates the shadow they have been running from their entire life. Pass 3, shadow activation. When your stable energy begins to touch the unconscious layers they have long locked away, the relationship enters the phase Jung calls shadow activation, when their shadow is pulled to the surface by your very presence. In the beginning, they idealize you to an almost unrealistic degree. It's not because you are perfect, but because they need an object onto which they can project the ideal image they themselves cannot become. You become the mirror they use to borrow light for their ego. This idealization makes you feel special, cherished, connected, but in reality you are playing the role of the perfect missing piece in the story they have written for themselves. They idealize you so they can idealize themselves through you. All the attention and favor they pour on you at this stage is their way of testing whether your light is strong enough to elevate their perceived value. But idealization always reaches a breaking point. When they realize that your light not only makes them look better, but also forces them to see the gray, murky parts inside themselves, their ego begins to tremble. They feel simultaneously elevated and exposed. This is when they shift into the need to possess. They want your light to belong entirely to them. They want your energy to serve only them. They want you to narrow your world so they have full access to it. They do not want to share the source of light they are now dependent on, because they do not understand that this light is not something to own, but an essential part of who you are. This possessiveness always comes with the fear of loss, because they know your light did not come from them, does not depend on them, and is increasingly highlighting the gap between you and their deteriorating inner world. And here is the decisive turning point, when they realize they cannot absorb your light into their ego, cannot turn you into an extension of the false self they've constructed, cannot control the energy you generate from within. A primal fear inside them is triggered. Jung calls this the anxiety of exposure, the terror of being seen. At the very moment they most want to possess you, they also realize you cannot be possessed. This throws them into violent inner conflict. They need you to feel valuable, but your existence makes them acutely aware of their lack of value. And from here, the downward spiral begins. They switch to destruction, not because you changed, but because they cannot bear the contrast between your light and their darkness. They start to diminish you, twist your words, assign bad intentions you do not have, and distort the things you do from the heart. They need you to shrink so they don't feel so small. Every criticism they hurl at you is a desperate attempt to shatter the mirror you have become, because in that mirror they see all the parts of themselves they buried: insecurity, weakness, dependency, envy, emotional immaturity. They do not hate you, they hate the image of themselves reflected through you. And when sabotage is not enough to extinguish your light, because true light is not easily put out, they escalate. They punish you. They go silent to make you anxious. They withdraw their energy to exhaust you. They gaslight you so you doubt yourself. They smear you to strip you of your support system. All of it is meant to make you abandon your own light so they no longer have to face the shadow your presence keeps summoning. But the deepest paradox lies here. In trying to break you to protect their ego, they unintentionally destroy the very source of supply they depend on. When you grow tired, indifferent, when you pull back your energy or leave, they fall into what many experts call the collapse of the borrowed self. There is no longer anyone to regulate their emotions for them, no one to reflect the beautiful version of themselves they wanted to believe in, no more light to make them feel less dark, and the emptiness inside them, always there, but blurred by you, returns in full force, dense, suffocating, inescapable. It is precisely this moment that makes them obsessed again. Not obsessed with love, not obsessed with you as a person, but obsessed with the energy source they cannot generate, yet cannot exist without. The loop of idealization, possession, destruction, punishment, obsession is triggered again, more intensely, more desperately, because with each cycle, their shadow grows larger, as your light becomes clearer. They cannot leave you because they cannot face themselves when you are no longer there. Part 4. When you withdraw your energy, the reversal of power, and collapse according to Jung. What the narcissist never anticipates is that your light and your energy do not exist to serve them. They exist because you had to learn to create them in order to survive. That is why, when you withdraw your energy, not with rage, not with revenge, but with the stillness of someone who understands their mechanisms all too well, the entire structure of their ego begins to collapse in a truly Jungian sense. The disintegration of the false self when it no longer receives blood supply from outside. Your energy once functioned as their substitute emotional regulation system, as a mirror confirming their ego, as a source of supply through which they define themselves. When you stop providing that, they do not just lose you, they lose the version of themselves they had borrowed from your light. This is the moment Jung would describe as catastrophic withdrawal, a sudden cutting off of supply that crashes the dependent psychic structure into a reality it cannot withstand. They feel the emptiness they have been running from all their life, and because they have no inner skills to handle it, they respond with chaos, trying to hoover you back, pull you in, provoke feelings in you, make you angry, make you hurt, all just to see if they can get your energy to flow toward them one more time. This is not the instinct of love, it is the survival instinct of an ego with no center. When you withdraw your energy, your silence creates a space they cannot tolerate. It is a space where the only echo they hear is not your voice, but their own. Empty, fragmented, unstructured. This is shadow confrontation. The face-to-face encounter with the shadow that Jung said is the most terrifying experience for an ego that has never matured. Your withdrawal forces them to look at the parts they locked away in childhood, the fear of abandonment, the primal shame, the longing to be loved without knowing how to love, and most painfully, the realization that no one can be a replacement ego for them. In this process, power reverses naturally. When you stay, they control your emotional rhythm, manipulate your reactions, and rely on your energy to keep their inner flow going. But when you no longer react, no longer pour energy into that unconscious bond, they lose the center of their power. They realize that what they once believed was their influence over you was in fact your sensitivity to them. And when they can no longer stir you, they are forced to see they were never truly powerful. You were simply highly attuned, open-hearted, easily reached, deeply empathic. From there, they must confront an uncompromising truth. Their power never originated from them. It came from what you invested in them. When you leave, they lose everything. Arig, arig. Were you? Energetically, it is like you unplugging a device that only runs on external electricity. On its own, it cannot function. It glitches, short circuits, then shuts down. Many people think the narcissist is strong, independent, proud, but all of that only works as long as they are inhaling energy from you. Once the supply disappears, the collapse happens so fast that even they are stunned. Some panic and hoover obsessively. Some turn cold and cruel to hide their fear. Some cling to a perfect mask while quietly disintegrating inside. But all of them go through the same thing. Their existence is no longer stable without you. And what gives this entire process such immense power is that you don't have to do anything. You do not attack, you do not retaliate, you do not prove anything. Your withdrawal itself is the act of individuation, the decision to return to your own center, to refuse to be supply for any false self, to refuse to let your energy be drained by structures that cannot stand on their own. In that exact moment, you do not just reclaim your energy, you reclaim the definition of who you are. And for the narcissist, nothing is more terrifying than losing access to a soul they had grown accustomed to treating as their life source. Part 5. The moment they realize you have risen beyond their influence, the transcendent shift. What terrifies the narcissist most is not the day you walk away. It is the moment they realize you have stepped out of their emotional orbit, when they can no longer stir you, trigger you, shake you, or pull you back with any signal. This is the transcendent shift in Jung's language, the turning point where a soul rises above the entire unconscious structure that once held it captive. In this phase, they not only lose control over you, they lose the very ability to define your role in their inner world. You no longer exist within the reach of their projected shadow. You no longer play any role in the script they wrote. You no longer interact inside the simulated space they once used to control you. And for someone who survives through control, that is a true collapse. Once you step beyond their orbit, the first thing they feel is that your silence is no longer the silence of someone wounded. It is the silence of someone who has disconnected from their energetic field entirely. They sense clearly that you have uprooted yourself from the unconscious hooks they once clung to, that you are no longer sending even the slightest stream of energy toward them, and that every Hoover attempt, manipulation, breadcrumb, memory trigger, or fear-based lure dissolves into meaningless emptiness. To them, this experience feels like standing before a door that was always open, now locked, walls rebuilt, and the key no longer in their hands. That moment awakens in them the truth they fear most. You have moved beyond the reach of their shadow. This is something a narcissist cannot tolerate, because it exposes the reality that they were never as powerful as they believed. They were only powerful as long as you allowed it. When you rise above, they must face the question they have avoided their entire lives. Who am I when I can no longer control someone else's emotions? And because they have no answer, their entire ego structure begins to shake. In Jung's terms, this is the moment when the shadow loses its host object, forcing the ego to confront the reality that it has always depended on external reflection to exist. On the energetic level, your shift is like a frequency jump. You no longer emit energy synchronized with their chaos, you rise to a higher frequency, the frequency of self-possession, self-awarenessness, and self-nourishment. And because they cannot ascend to that frequency, they are left behind in the low vibrational space they are accustomed to. This creates a subconscious sense of being left out, an ancient fear of being abandoned in the darkness of the world. That fear is what makes them rage, feel wounded, become confused, and sometimes attempt revenge, just to see if they can drag you back down to a level where they can control you again. But here is the paradox. The more they try to pull you down, the more they realize you are no longer standing there. You do not react. You do not get angry. You do not join the performance. You no longer need their validation. You no longer use them as a reference point for understanding yourself. You are standing at a height they can no longer reach. That is when their panic turns into a silent acknowledgement, even if they will never say it out loud, that they have lost. Not lost to you, but lost to the darkness inside themselves, because your light left before they could extinguish it. And when they quietly watch you step into a new life, a life without them, not reacting to them, not revolving around them, they finally understand something they never wanted to know. You were never their supply. You were a soul they never had the depth to hold. And this is the greatest victory in the Jungian sense. Not the victory over the narcissist, but the victory over the unconscious part of you that used to be activated by them. When you rise beyond their influence, you do not simply escape them, you escape the version of yourself that was once bound to them. And that is the real liberation. In the end, the entire journey between you and the narcissist is not a tragic love story, not a power struggle, and not a wound you must carry forever. It is a rite of transformation, a confrontation between light and shadow in the fullest Jungian sense, where their shadow was activated by your light, and your light was forced to mature because of their shadow. You did not come into their life to save them, nor to be destroyed by them. You came to see the hidden parts of yourself, to understand how powerful your energy truly is, and to realize that the light you carry is not as fragile as you once thought. When the relationship hits rock bottom, when you withdraw your energy, when you rise beyond their influence, that is not the end. It is the birth of a new self, one that no longer operates from wounds, but from awareness. You no longer absorb the energy of others, no longer move according to the fear of abandonment, no longer get pulled into cycles of manipulation. You stand up in silence, not because you are cold, but because your soul has grown too spacious to react to what is no longer worthy. And the narcissist, even if they never admit it, feels this transformation. They watch you walk away gently, peaceful, unresentful, not begging, not proving anything. They see your light becoming clearer, sharper, more structured, a light they cannot possess, cannot destroy, and cannot dim. Because it is no longer light born from a wound, it is light born from self-mastery. The path ahead for you is not to run away from darkness, but to walk with it as part of your spiritual life. Jung said, individuation, the journey of becoming yourself, does not happen during peaceful days, but in the moments when the soul is pulled to the bottom to find its true center. And you have found that center. You are no longer a mirror reflecting someone else's darkness. You are the light guiding yourself. You are no longer the supply that keeps someone else alive. You are the source of your own life. You are no longer a victim in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. When you understand this, you no longer resent them, no longer blame life, no longer wonder why you met them. You understand that every encounter is symbolic. They came to activate the darkness you needed to face. You came to learn how to withdraw your energy, stand upright, and guard the inner light that no one gets to trespass again. In the end, you walk out of that story not with a broken heart, but with a matured soul. Because true light is not the light that never goes out. True light is the light that knows how to reignite itself every time it is plunged into darkness. And from that moment on, the narcissist is no longer a central chapter in your life story. They are simply a test you have passed. You step into a new chapter, a chapter where you know who you are, and you are no longer afraid to be it.